Welcome to the worst sports channel on YouTube, Hot Garbage Sports with me, Coach Ryan D. I hope you got enough of the NHL Draft and you're pumped about what your team is taking away. Prospects, gold, busts, boom. They're all there. The NHL Draft is one of the most unique times in sports for a couple reasons. It's the only professional sports draft in such a physical sport that is drafted so young. 17, 18, and 19-year-olds get together all around their 18th birthday because it's a September to September draft. There's a couple janky things in there that can make actual 19-year-olds and true 17-year-olds get in there as well too. A couple days here and there, but it is a wild time for these young men entering the NHL. And for the most part, these players have had 1 year to show off their stuff going into the NHL because junior is 16, 17, 18, and 19. Most of these draftees have played either at 16 or 17, so they have a year, sometimes two if they've made it at 16 to strut their stuff for the NHL. And some of the older players get to play 1 year of college, making it the valuable third year when going into the draft in order to get a little bit more exposure time and bump up your draft stock. Stay tuned with me. I'm going to talk about the round one draft reactions for three key players, and I'm going to explain to you all the nuances as to what coaches and scouts and teams are looking for in the draft so you can better evaluate your own team's draft. This is part one. We're going to go down a several part series of the NHL Draft where we break down players, teams, Canadian teams, but right now we need to set the table and explain why players get drafted, what skills scouts are looking for to get drafted, and then I'll give you three awesome banging examples from round one with Owen Power, Beniers, and Carson Lambos. Stick with us through the intro. Let's get to it.
Here's Lemieux. The center penalty coming up.
All right, so who am I? Well, I'm Coach Ryan D, and I hold an NCCP Hockey Canada High Performance Certification.
What do you think?
What is that?
What does that mean? Well, it basically means that I've been involved in hockey at the highest levels of coaching for the last decade. And because of that, because of my classroom work, the theses I've written, the documentations, the practices I've run, the high level athletes that I've been able to develop, and the mentors I have worked with all along the stages of Hockey Canada, I have been granted High Performance 1 certification. Take a look at it. Bam. There you go. Not making it up. That's where the Coach Ryan D moniker comes from. And I had two amazing players go in this year's draft. Connor Roulette, Carson Lambos. I'm not saying I made him. Not at all. I'm saying I was able to work with these players throughout their journey, be a part of something special. And these guys, they're going to go on to be amazing NHL players. So congrats to those two. So that is who I am. I have the unique ability here on YouTube to use my skills of being able to break down players, understanding this game from an individual tactical standpoint, and let you know how these players are going to fit in to your systems. So let's go ahead and talk about what makes a good player from a very high level, because this gets extremely granular. Remember, most teams have anywhere from 15 to 20 scouts all over the world who are frankly better than me at doing this. They're better than all of us at doing this. This is why they are scouts at the highest level. They need to get into a room with general managers and other key decision makers, including coaches, and sort out between 20 and 25 men and women who the best players actually are for them as players get picked up in the draft. And it is very difficult because these players are this close together. But from a high level, to give you a basic understanding of what makes an NHL player, and this may surprise some of you, let's take a look at it. Now, we always hear about talent, IQ, and work ethic. The big things that we want to look at. There are so many things that incorporate those categories. I could spend, well, a decade, as I have, just on talent alone. But let's go ahead and use those three categories. Talent being your raw ability to play the game. The skills you possess to play the game. You can improve your talent somewhat. You can improve your skills somewhat, but your talent usually is a little bit gifted from birth and a little bit gifted from genetics, as well as your basic love and dedication to the game through a young age. Work ethic is your love of the game. The more you're willing to work hard at this game, the better you're going to be. And IQ is how you use that big brain to utilize your talents, your work ethic, and outthink opponents on the ice. So those are three big categories. Let's talk about the categories and how they frame out NHL players. So you have talent, plus high work ethic plus high IQ. Well, that's going to be an elite NHL player, and that's really easy for anybody to see. These are the Sidney Crosbys, the Connor McDavids of the world. These are the Rasmus Dahlins of the world on defense, the Cale Makars, and in net, this is the Andre Vasilevskis and Connor Hellebucks of the world. When you possess all three of these, you absolutely have the ability to be an elite NHL player. A lot of people will tell kids, and a lot of people will spin fairy tales that talent can be made up for by work ethic and IQ. I don't believe that.
Jack, did you eat a cupcake?
No.
You didn't eat a cupcake?
No, I was at home.
You sure you didn't eat a cupcake?
No.
So let's talk about if you have talent, a low work ethic, and a high IQ. Well, guess what? You're probably still going to be an NHL player. If you have high talent and high IQ, you're going to be very efficient on the ice, and teams are going to take a chance on you in the draft. You may slip down to the middle of the first round or even the second round or the third round, but you're still going to be a rather high draft pick, even if your work ethic isn't the highest. I know they talk about character and interviews, and I can hear people gritting their teeth right now like, oh, that doesn't happen. It does. It does all the time because there is no replacement for talent. And when you have talent plus IQ, you have a very good chance of being an NHL player. How long you stay, how good you get, and the money you make later on, well, your work ethic's definitely going to negatively impede that, but it's not going to keep you out of the NHL completely. So what if you have talent, a high work ethic, and a low IQ? This actually happens all the time. There's a lot of character guys, as they talk about. Character guys are very talented players. And I mean, if you want to think of a fourth line player as not being talented, that's wrong. They're very talented players. These are very talented players who are character guys in the room who outwork everybody at practice, who make up for some lacks in IQ and talent through just sheer will of force. These players can also make the NHL. So then what about if you just have talent alone? You're supremely talented and you have questionable work ethic or low work ethic, and you have questionable IQ or low IQ. I hate to burst your bubble, but if your talent is that good that you've made it this far in your NHL career, that you are a consideration to be drafted in one of the best leagues in the world, from one of the best leagues in the world, link above if you want to know where NHL players actually come from based on those leagues. If you've made it to one of those leagues that I talked about in that video above, you're damn good. And if you're damn good and you have a lot of talent and you were one of the top players in those leagues, because remember, this is only 16 to 20-year-olds we're talking about here, you're still going to get drafted. So high talent, low or little work ethic, low or little IQ. You can snowball GMs, you can snowball coaches with good answers in interviews, and you likely will have a chance taken on you. And then we have no talent or low talent and high work ethic and high IQ. I hate to say it, but these guys have a very low chance of making the NHL. There's just no replacement for talent. So when we're talking about talent, we're talking about skills. And there are 5 core skills to hockey, which people go, well, duh, these are easy skills. They get broken down to micro minutia levels that will just explode your brain. The first skill on the base of talent or skill level is skating. You heard it talked about all over the draft. If you were a poor skater, you fell down the draft board. And none of these guys are poor skaters by world skating standards. They are poor skaters when they fall down the draft by NHL skating standards. So you're still good enough to play in the NHL, but you end up taking a bit of a hit. So if you have elite skating ability, that means you have the ability to be an elite player. You need that base. Everything on the base of pyramids becomes skating oriented. You can be great with the other 4 skills, but if you are a poor skater, you likely will struggle in the NHL. There's exceptions to this, to which I will talk about. There's always exceptions to every rule. But remember, an NHL draft is all about averages because, well, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for averages within each round for what player could maybe contribute to your team down the road. So skating is number 1 on the pyramid, and really good skating leads to the next skill level, which is puck control. Being able to control the puck on your stick, and having the puck on your stick is huge. Being able to control the puck while skating at high speeds becomes critical in today's NHL. And really good puck control then leads to really good passing. Passing is number 3 on the pyramid list. So if you can skate, if you can control pucks, and you can pass, now we're starting to shape out a well-rounded player. Good passing, though, leads to really good shooting. Very rare you're going to have snipers that are bad at the following 3 skills. You're just not going to be just a sniper. You have to be a pretty good passer, you have to be a reasonably good skater, and you have to be excellent at puck control in order to be able to shoot. The whole Fulton Reed from the Mighty Ducks, where you can't handle a puck, you can barely skate, and you just got a slap shot. No chance there, Happy Gilmore. Hit the bricks.
They saw my power, man. Ain't no way they're gonna dog me this year. Well, hey, Coach, what's going on here, man? What about me?
Gilmore, I called your number, didn't I?
No, you didn't.
Oh. Well, better luck next year.
So shooting is a derivative of good passing, good puck control, and everything is a derivative of good skating. And then the fifth skill is checking, being able to check, whether that be stick checks or physical checks. How do you become a good checker in hockey? Well, you need to be a good skater. You don't necessarily have to be the best with puck control. You don't necessarily have to be the best with passing. So you can have players that are great skaters that become very good checkers and role players in the NHL and are dust with stick skills. Happens not all the time, but a relatively small amount of the time, 5 to 8% of NHL players just aren't strong at the other three skills, but because they're excellent skaters, they become excellent checkers, and they're role players that get anywhere from 4 to 8 minutes in a game. Think penalty killers. But again, if you're missing those three core stick skills, it does become tough. So to be a good checker, you have to be an amazing skater. And that is just physics. You can be as big as you want, but speed, when we're talking about physics, makes up for size. The velocity of an object, the direction it's going, plus the weight of the object is going to realize the impact. And then finally, good skating allows you to take good angles, and people who take good angles are also good checkers because this is just a game of math and angles. Hockey. Bet you didn't think I was going to ask you to solve for X. All right, so let's break this down to a quick high level view of where Hockey Canada has, some explanation of these skills in greater detail. All right, here we go. Here's a good example from one of my coaching manuals for the U15, U18 Elite Hockey Canada players when we're walking through some of the skills that you're building. And this is very similar to what an NHL scout is evaluating because they expect every player entering at 18 years old to be able to have these skills in some form or another. So skating, take a look at it. Strong on the feet, your strides, your edges, your transitions and pivots. Strong on the feet basically means, are you hard to knock off? Do you have a good chair sitting position? Stride, how long is your stride? And does that flat part of the blade contact with the ice for the longest period of time when pushing sideways? Edges are one of those things on the inside or outside for how well do you balance. The lower you are able to get at an angle of an attack, the better you're going to be. And hockey is a funny sport because it is not translatable to other non-skating sports. Why? Because in hockey, we push outwards. When our legs are pushing, they are pushing laterally. We are using our groin muscles and our butt muscles to push our feet laterally out to create speed. People think you're pushing backwards. If you're, unfamiliar with the game, you're not. You're pushing directly out. And by pushing that blade out, you're creating a lot of friction on the ice to push the other blade forward and to begin to hydroplane over top the ice surface. It's crazy physics how this all works. But in regular sports, soccer, baseball, football, you're using knee drives to go north-south. It is a totally different muscle group. Yes, it's both your legs. Don't get on me. But when you are driving north to south, when you are running or jumping, you are driving your knee up. And then you are pushing backwards with your planted foot in order to create explosion to go forwards. Where in hockey, you're pushing laterally. So every other sport in the world that isn't on ice, you are pushing backwards, and hockey, you're pushing laterally. That's why when we're evaluating skating and you hear the term, he's a naturally gifted skater, it is somebody who has figured out how to lengthen their stride horizontally on the ice while keeping the most amount of the blade contacting the ice so you get the most amount of power. That is all a result of being strong in your feet and lengthening your stride. And then you get into the more advanced ones, changes of direction. Being able to skate in 4 directions, north, south, east, west. Hockey is a 4-direction game. And then obviously it's a 360-degree direction game because we have different angles within there. But we talk about 4 directions. Stability, power, agility, quick feet, evasive turns. Evasive turns are very different from normal power turns. It means you are changing the direction of your feet to trick an opponent. You're going one way and then quickly changing direction to go the other way. Your body does one thing, your feet and mind are ready to do the next. You do it quicker than the opponent. You create space. All right, so that is skating in the smallest nutshell it could ever be. Then you have individual offensive play with puck control. How do you control the puck? We saw it on the Mighty Ducks. They used an egg in order to learn puck control. Do you carry the puck with speed? That is not an accident that it's number 2. Puck control with speed, meaning you're a great skater who does not lose any speed in turning or moving 4 directions with the puck. Driving to the net. Are you willing to play the dirty areas, or are you willing to drive to the net with the puck? Stick fakes, body fakes, dekes. Dekes are just normal stick handles using your shoulders, hands, wrists, and eyes to be able to make moves with the puck. And creativity plus deception. Individual offensive play, passing and receiving, puck management skills, passing, look-offs. You know what? Pause the video here if you really want to get into this and take a look at all these skill categories. Go ahead, I'll give you a second. Okay, great. So now you've had a little bit of a taste of what's on an NHL scouts list when they're evaluating these. And when you take a look at draft grades and reactions, this is what's going through professionals' heads when they look at it. So when you look at draft grades and reactions from other sites around the internet, whether it be YouTube or online, are they uniquely qualified to evaluate these certain types of things? Maybe, maybe not. But this helps you as armchair GMs, this just little tidbit, in order to read between the lines when you're reading draft grades on your players for how you think they might enter into your system. So if you have the skill and the talent, like we said, talent is the number 1 base to an NHL player above IQ and above work ethic. Then we start evaluating the IQ and the work ethic. If we end up having a hit on both of those, we end up having a hit of a player and someone that can play in multiple spaces. Now, when we talk about playing multiple spaces, or when we talk about hockey players' importance as a role, it all again breaks down to this talent and this skill-based level. So we know we have goalies, defensemen, centermen, and wingers, and we know in the NHL draft that certain positions are prized over other positions. And that is because certain positions end up being those positions. The best players in the world end up playing those positions because they're the most talented players in the world at their age categories as they develop through. So the best player on most teams at a young age usually is a centerman. That's why they're so sought after, because if you're the best centerman at one level and you keep moving up and you remain a top centerman at every level, you're likely going to be a centerman at the NHL. And if you're not, you're still probably going to make a pretty good converted winger. Defensemen are something that have come on in the last 25 years because people have realized 2 factors with defensemen when raising kids or coaches when moving players around, that maybe your best player shouldn't be your centerman, it should be your defenseman because they eat more ice time. There's only 6 of them instead of 12 of them. That means it is a more scarce position, and defense get to quarterback the play from the sense that they get to see the ice surface from behind their goal line, north, south, and make evaluations. So that means the smarter a player is, the better attuned he's going to be to being a defenseman, but also the more talented a player is, the better he is going to be as a defenseman. And defensemen are very hard to evaluate. And then finally, goalies are on their own. What makes goalies so unique is it's a game within a game. I'll do a whole video on goalies, but goalies thrive under pressure and they thrive being left alone. I'm not saying they don't want to be part of the team, but they have made the competitive choice that they want this to be their net and the last line of defense before a puck goes in. Yes, they're part of a team, but they have their own instructors. They have their own ways you need to practice. You need to incorporate them into practice differently. You need to evaluate them differently, scout them differently. That's why goalies fall or rise in drafts. We're going to talk about them in a second. So wingers, easiest ones, absolutely easiest converts to the NHL level because you're just looking to go north-south. You're doing less responsibility than a centerman, less responsibility than a defenseman. Easier to evaluate on talent because if you have a talented winger that scores goals or creates offense, well, you probably got a player that's going to play at the NHL level. So when you are drafting based on position, talent, skill, and IQ, you are taking all these things into account when making a pick. All right, so that about does it for our preamble on why your team has either drafted the player they drafted, what they do to evaluate, and why maybe they picked the position they've picked. Stay tuned to part 2 of our next video where we end up breaking down Power, Beniers, and a little bit of a wild card, 3 best players in the draft that are not goalies. We are going to break them down for you using actual game footage, clips, and the coach's background. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you in part 2.